bit and I kept going. But our guest today is a Nigerian entrepreneur, an investment banker, and an economist. He is the founder of Stanbic IBTC Bank PLC, Anap Business Jets Limited, and of course, the Anap Foundation. As I said, he was educated at the King's College, Lagos, arguably the best school in the world, and then proceeded to City University in London, where he obtained his first degree in economics. Thereafter, he got his MSc from the London School of Economics and Political Science, and then did an owner-managers program at Harvard Business School from 1991 to 1993. He was conferred with an honorary Doctor of Science degree by University of Port Harcourt and also an honorary fellow of the Chartered Institute of Stockbrokers, which he got in April 2019. All his productive and most of his professional life, he was a banker, I believe, starting with the Nigerian Acceptances Limited, now Merchant Bank, and then went on to start the IBTC Bank in when he was just 33 years old, and led that bank successfully till September 2007, when IBTC merged with Stanbic Bank Nigeria Limited to form Stanbic IBTC Bank, when he then became chairman, and then oversaw a very, very smooth transition to a second and now possibly a third generation of managers. He also was part of he founded the Anap Foundation COVID-19 think tank, and has been a great commentator in Nigeria's economic, business, and political affairs. If I keep on reading what he has achieved, we will take the rest of the evening.
Recording in progress.
Please welcome with me tonight Atedo Peterside, CON, founder, Stanbic IBTC Merchant Bank PLC, and president, founder, the Anap Foundation. Atedo, I'm happy to have you with us tonight, and I want to thank you for finding the time to be here. And I know that it is indeed one of your great passions to see good come out of Nigeria and to see the good of Nigeria. Welcome.
Thank you, Ito. And now that you've introduced me and made it clear that I'm much older than you and you've stopped being a baby, so you've told the whole world how old I am. But I just want to quickly apologize because a number of people were asking me, oh, how come you never appeared on Ito's program? You never appeared there, blah, blah, blah. You know, we have mutual friends. And I told them, look, Ito and I have spoken, and I assured him that I will appear there someday. You know, I mean, he's not running away. Next week, week after, that day will come. So I take solace in the fact that God's time is best. So perhaps today is God's time. Thank you.
I think so. Thank you very, very much for coming. We're looking today at 2023, choosing the right leaders for our great country. And maybe I can start by doing a throwback to an article you wrote in 2014, I believe it was, when we were all preparing for, was it going to be Jonathan or was it going to be Buhari? At that time, President Jonathan was in charge of Nigeria, and then Major General Buhari was the challenger based on the merger that had formed the now APC. In that article, you titled it The Ugly Side of Buhari and Jonathan. And I do remember that there was quite a pushback, especially from the APC people on that article. And I think the summary of that article was that heads, you don't win, and tails, you lose. That what our political process has thrown up for us are two people who are both not very, very capable and possibly not competent enough to be leaders of Nigeria. And somehow or the other, like you said, quoting you, many of the swing votes are upset. They feel that our two major political parties have cheated them by forcing them to choose between the devil and the deep blue sea, and that we are not going to get much good out of either choice. Eventually, I think for one reason or the other, Buhari emerged our president. I quote you again. He said, I am sad.
You're on mute.
You're muted.
Okay, I'm back on now. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I can.
Good. Okay, and I quote you again. You did say that I am sad that an aging and incapable, I mean, you mentioned those two words then, Buhari refuses to play the role of kingmaker by identifying a single well-educated and well-meaning younger person 2 or 3 years ago, even if he narrowed his search to his own Northwest, who he could have groomed and backed to challenge Goodluck Ebele Jonathan. Here we are in 2022, now trying to make some choices. Let me ask you, Atedo, why were you so almost spot on your analysis of the Buhari government, or General Buhari as it was? Quite a lot of people had the impression that he was the Messiah, that we're going to have a very disciplined country, that the economy was going to turn around, and that things were going to improve. And people kept on saying that he had 12 million votes that couldn't be ignored, and that he was a more capable choice. How come you were so almost spot on your analysis?
Okay, I think let me just point out that, first of all, I would like us to try and have this discussion a bit in the abstract. Of course, when we go to historical documents, we have no choice. I'm not denying the fact that I wrote an article that was entitled The Ugly Side of Buhari and Jonathan. Of course, everything I've written is available today on the internet, Wikipedia, everywhere. But all I was just saying is that when I'm answering you and so on, I don't want to reduce this engagement to make it sound like I'm after one person or after the other person or out to rubbish somebody. The only priority, the only thing that concerns me is that we learn mistakes we made before and put in place processes that ensure that we don't repeat the exact same mistake. To answer your question, having given this background, why was I so sure in 2015? I'm not a magician. I don't claim to be a prophet or even a pastor like you. So I did what I always do when I look at people for a position. I've interviewed people all my life. You said I was a CEO from an early age. I was in the business of interviewing everybody that came forward, looking at a position, analyzing what skills were required, skill sets, personality traits, everything, looking at the candidate and trying to reconcile the two. I simply applied the exact same process to quantify the sum total of the knowledge that I thought was being displayed by the candidate, and pointed out that I was sorry that I did not think in 2015 that he was good enough for the position, and I gave my reasons in some detail. So the more important thing is that as a nation, we should apply that same type of methodology. You look at the position, ask yourself what qualities are required, what kind of person do we need, what skill sets, what overall knowledge and so on is required. If the two don't fit, there's a problem. So therefore, the reason for this whole discussion is because we are approaching 2023. And we want to ensure that this time we examine people, look at their credentials, look at the demands of the job. And let me add one more thing. I think the demands of the job keep on increasing. And yes, in 2015, I dismissed Jonathan as being a bad candidate. But let me also confess that in 2011, I endorsed Jonathan as a good candidate. So am I saying that 4 years after, he changed tremendously? The article points out that 4 years after, a few things changed. One of them was that I was disappointed by his ability as a leader to hold people working under him in check and put them under his control and take charge. So that was the knowledge I had after 4 years of observing somebody. And therefore, I didn't think that he deserved another 4 more years. If you've not used your 4 years to the best of what I think is your ability, then I don't think you deserve another 4. With Buhari, the issue was that, you said it yourself, I thought there are some children disturbing the whole program in the background in somebody's room. Yes, so with Buhari, the issue was that I made a recommendation. If the man has a followership, if he's like, potentially some people love him, he should look himself in the mirror and ask himself whether he has the skills, the knowledge, and the capacity to run Nigeria in the 21st century, in 21st century. I felt he did not have them, and that's why I recommended that instead he should have been forced into the role of a kingmaker and let him nominate somebody younger than himself, better equipped to handle the task at hand. So it was a recommendation, and I'll end by saying on this particular question that many people took me up on it and said, everything you read in that article, we saw it. Even APC did a rejoinder. Of course, they abused me thoroughly, but I didn't mind because I wrote it for posterity. But they said, Atedo, you said this thing a little bit late. But if you really saw all this, why didn't you say it perhaps 2 months earlier or 3 months earlier? There would have been time enough for us to do some soul searching, whether this fellow was the right candidate or whether we should rethink. So this time around, we're in January 2022. The election is far away. Let nobody come and say that this time around you're saying it too late. Because this time around, even INEC says the race is yet to start. So we want to make sure that even before the race starts, we begin to think properly so that let the best person or persons emerge so that we're not left again with 2 poor choices.
Thank you very much. Maybe I should take you back a little bit in history. Since independence in 1960, starting from the time of Tafawa Balewa to now, we've had about 14 leadership stretches, about 14 of them, 1 or 2 repeated, Obasanjo and now Buhari. How come Nigeria is where it is, and how come, aside from the military interregnum and interruptions, how come we seem to have consequently, subsequently, and concurrently not seem to have chosen quite the right kind of leaders in Nigeria? What's your thinking about that?
Okay, first of all, you're right to say let's exclude the military because we did not have a say who came out and brought out a gun and said fellow Nigerians. In fact, sometimes some of us, in spite of that, criticize them thoroughly to the point of risking our lives. So with the military, you can put them aside. So the more important thing is that when we fought for democracy and got democracy, what have we done with the democracy? And how can we ensure that going forward, our democratic process throws up the very best options so that we're talking about putting our best foot forward as a nation? So if you leave out the military, you look at the politicians who emerged from the political process, just so that people don't think that all Atedo does is whoever comes out, you say the person is not good enough. Let me just tell you that from my knowledge of history and everything I read and researched, I was personally impressed with Tafawa Balewa as a prime minister. I think that if he was chosen by Ahmadu Bello chose well. If you don't believe me, go and read speeches from Balewa speaking off head in difficult situations, difficult circumstances, overseas, locally. Ahmadu Bello chose well. So somewhere along the line, we lost this plot. We lost the plot. Ahmadu Bello could choose well before you were born, Itwa. As a nation, where do we find ourselves now that we're in danger of not choosing well, the same way that he chose well? And please, let's be careful. Let's give people their pride of place in history. Ahmadu Bello probably had everybody in Nigeria to look at, he could have picked. In the whole of the North, he could have picked almost anybody. What do you think went through his thought processes before he chose Balewa? What was he looking for, those qualities? I put it to you that it's those exact same qualities that I was looking for when I said, I'm sorry, that I did not think Buhari was good enough, nor was Jonathan in 2015. So I'm saying that I would love people like you and your colleagues and your even younger people to put ourselves through that same thinking process like Ahmadu Bello. So we're talking about bringing out the very best of the candidates we can find. So this is not about trying to run down all past leaders. I've already picked one for you that, as far as I'm concerned, Balewa was as good as you could produce. So also the task, therefore, is to ensure that we produce more Balewas.
Do you then think that the military people who came in 1966 in Nziogo and Co., they had no basis to interrupt a civilian process, and we had a good nation going based on the kind of leadership that was in charge at that time?
Yeah, you know, that is such a deep topic. And if I go into it deeply, we will derail from what we are trying to achieve. So I'll just make one comment and beg you to leave it. You see, the fact is that those young coup plotters, I still pinch myself to think that 27-year-olds, 30-year-olds thought they could take over a country. They had a plot to wipe out many people. I'm not sure they had a complete plot on how to take control of Nigeria. Because, look, it's easier to destroy than to create or to build. So a madman can take a gun and shoot down everybody. But having done that, he doesn't necessarily have the ability to enthrone a sound government. So I think the point I'm making is that Nigeria had problems. Their understanding of the problem was that part of the solution should be something very radical. So I can never get up and start trying to justify anybody's actions. But I'm trying to point out to you that they thought that was the solution to Nigeria's problems. Today, you and I are saying, or at least I am saying, I'm sure of myself, I am never going to support any drastic military solution, because I also am a Democrat at heart, and I believe that the democratic processes, utilized by people like you and I, and people who mean well, we can come together and produce good leaders. So that should be our focus. So whether those guys had reasons for their approach, whatever it was, yes, they wiped out leaders, good and bad, and left us in a position with military leaders whom we never chose. It took us almost 30 years to free ourselves from that. So that is in our history. Now we have a chance in 2022, 2023, to learn from the mistakes of those past military leaders, many of whom, even in their own speeches, admitted they were new to governance. They were like Boy Scouts trying to learn something quickly. I remember when I came back to the country, 1997, I went as a young economist with a master's degree in economics. I went for a press conference. It was a minister for budgets announcing the budget. It was a military man, of course. It was clear from everything he was reading that he was just reading what they gave him. So at the end of the whole session, they asked for questions. When I asked him one question, he took off his glasses, almost to ask, who is that young rascal who almost quizzing me? So the point I'm making is that we have to move away from all that, putting people into positions. They don't understand the issues. They cannot grapple with them. They cannot execute. So what we're talking about now is, let's think positive, Itwa. What are the things we need to do now to ensure that we produce the right kind of leaders? What are the steps we need to take? I would say we have to have a template. All of us should demand the same template. Whoever comes out, and let me broaden, when I say leader, if you notice I say leaders, let's not think about this only about the president. A president surrounded by useless governors, useless senators, useless House of Rep, useless State Assembly, useless LGA councillors and all, has already failed. So we're talking about putting in place a process that we elevate quality to the top in multiple places, beginning, of course, with the presidency. First of all, when you're looking for a president, what are you looking for? The person should be able to come out, get up and tell you why he thinks that out of 200 million Nigerians today, he is the one that is best placed, has the best skills, can withstand everything from background checks, has the track record, has the capacity, has the knowledge, integrity, and all. Let somebody get up and claim that, and then put him on a program like this, and then you grill him. Let all of us be grill everybody that comes forward. That process alone, some people will withdraw their names. Please don't forget what I said. It's a serious background checks, track record, capacity. Please, there's a difference. Anybody can read a beautiful speech that he didn't write. It only means he employed a good speech writer. I'm talking about some people standing before you and interacting with you, almost like a debate, interview one-on-one. There are no aides involved, no notes. That is how you talk about somebody's capacity. If I had seen Buhari doing that in 2015, engaging everybody on every subject and reeling out solutions, I wouldn't have written what I said at the time. So I'm saying today in 2022, can we not as a country, intellectuals like you and I agree that the next people to lead us have to be more in the Balewa mode, people that you don't have to give notes to, people that you don't have to hide from interviews, from grilling, people who can stand up and represent us well, people who can execute. If we demand it, we will get it. If we don't demand it, we won't get it.
Are you sure we can demand it and get it? Let me put a scenario before you. I was talking to a politician this week, and he was saying to me clearly that the political process as it is, with the two parties that we have left on their own, cannot throw up any really good quality candidate for us just like that. The reason is that most of the politicians are thinking only of themselves, how to share power, how to share resources, and so on and so forth, like that. And he's a politician. I won't mention his name. He's been in the trenches himself. He's been at most of their meetings. And then he looked at both parties and he couldn't see much joy coming out of those parties. And he says, before we, the public, have an opportunity, they have decided at their various congresses and their various conventions and their various choosing of leaders. And they then present to us what my brother Aswe calls tweedledee and tweedledum, two not so good choices that you are limited to going to the polls. And that has created a lot of, like you described, apathy amongst a certain group of people. Please, can you mute your microphones? Mr. Techno Cannon, please mute your mic, please. That has created a lot of apathy and this group of people who refuse to vote because they don't see who to vote for. That's on the one side. So that process cannot, as it were, as we look at it in the physical, except if I fast and pray a bit more and God moves, I don't know. Then what then would you then suggest that we do, the ordinary Nigerian, the simple Nigerian, yourself, myself, the people on this platform, the guy in Ajegule, the guy in Zamfara, the guy in Sokoto, what can we do as a people to ensure that we put in place a process that will ensure that the right leaders come up? What are your suggestions on that?
Okay, see, let me explain. First of all, yes, we have two dominant political parties, but there have been two fundamental changes have taken place or should take place that should help to make 2023 different from the past. One of them is the effort to bring out a new electoral act. Many of us, and perhaps yourself inclusive, have been putting all manners of putting pressure on the legislators and everybody. You see, a defective system is highly unlikely to come out with something good. One of the biggest defects of our electoral system before was this refusal to count votes at the polling booths and to gather votes and say you're going to go and count in some counting center. That made it possible for people to get involved in all forms, shapes of hooliganism, ballot box stuffing, and all that. So that you need a combination of reform of a process, improve the electoral processes, which the most important things look like they may be done. And so there is some hope. The other thing is that even in the last election, I believe there was something like 79 or 80 political parties. That actually strengthened the two main political parties, because there was a sense of there's APC, there's PDP, and then the rest of the people who were against those two divided themselves across like 78 different parties and became non-starters. This time around, there are only 18 political parties. I suspect that under some scenarios, one of those 16 other parties is going to make itself a beautiful bride to accommodate and welcome all the people who are disenchanted. Even when I heard you speak now, you sounded disenchanted with the two-party political system. So we're in a country now where those who are disenchanted by the two-party system are almost more in number than those in the two parties combined. Because but the difference is that the people in those two parties are politically active. They wake up from morning to night playing politics. Those who are disenchanted are the majority, but they stay out and sound a little bit like you sounded, saying, what can we do when those two people are the ones in charge? But hang on a second, if you do the numbers, what I'm telling you is that those of us who are disenchanted together are more in number than those who are in APC and PDP. So it's about organization. It's about people creating movements that get people politically active and get them seeking a political home. Now, with limited choices now, only 16 other parties, of which a good number of them have almost disqualified themselves. Let me explain what I mean by disqualify yourself. If many of us are disenchanted and we're looking for a third party to go into, some of the remaining 16 have already ruled themselves out because they are appendages of APC, the appendages of PDP, and they tell you point blank, I'm only here to do the bidding of the other fellow. So there are only it's a narrower group that's left of those who potentially can be a beautiful bride that can open their doors and receive all those who are discontent. Let me tell you the biggest challenge to that and why many cannot do it. And I've been speaking to some of them, not for myself, for the benefit of the nation. You see, if you're in a small party, one of the 16, and you occupy all the posts already, and then you tell me that, oh, these 50 million people who are disenchanted should come and join you as floor members, I'll tell you there's something wrong with you. So you think that a handful of you in one tiny party will form the hierarchy, and everybody should come and join as floor members. So you cannot be serious. If you are serious, as a minimum, you should vacate something like 80% of all the official positions in your party, so that the newcomers can come in a meaningful way, occupy 80%, you hang on to your 20%. So there are discussions that may lead to that kind of thing. But can you see that it's almost a child of circumstance? So really, the more the APCs and PDPs remain undemocratic, the more they force people to think about trying something out of the box. Let's take a recent example. I said we won't mention names, but we'll use incidents. Take an Anambra election. Were you not disgusted that a ruling party, APC, even contestants went to court to say that there was no primary and they declared the results? How can a decent human being join a political party that conducts no primaries but declares a result and brings out a candidate? Can that political party be the best for Nigeria in 2022? Don't get me wrong, I'm not writing anybody off. They can reform themselves. So 3 things can happen. We can force the likes of APC to reform themselves a bit. In any case, APC is realizing now the hard way. In Zamfara, all the candidates were thrown out because they didn't follow due process. River State, they were all thrown out. Anambra, even the candidate went to court and was told there was no primary. So if care is not taken and they go on behaving like this, in several states, they'll be thrown out because losers will go to court and they'll be thrown out. So they themselves will have to be under some pressure to become a bit more democratic. PDP, the same thing. And then the rest of the people who don't have faith in either PDP or APC, my guess is that there are already lots of discussions. One or more of the other political parties will eventually open their doors properly to admit people who will take a meaningful position in the party and become a bit of a third force. I don't think it's going to happen by registering a brand new party. There's no time for that. It's almost like when we acquired banks in 2005 and so on. You take over an existing bank is easier sometimes than writing an application to begin something from brand new. In any case, if one of the existing parties is truly open-minded and will accommodate everybody and be democratic, then what else do you want, really? Isn't that what you are praying for? So the point I'm making is that the more APC remains undemocratic and PDP, the more they increase the chances that a third political party that properly tries to purge itself of that kind of behavior becomes a favored child. And all these movements can gravitate in that direction. It can happen between now and the next election. You don't have to win. If they win, it's a bonus. But guess what? A third force does one thing also. It begins to force the other two to behave better. So overall, you get a win-win. Part of the problem is that there's been no third force at all. So these people believe that it doesn't matter what rubbish they do, they will win.
Yes, because part of the argument that they are putting forward, whether rightly or wrongly, and you may want to speak to it, is that number one, the third force may not be able to work because they don't have the structure, and it's going to be difficult for them to have any kind of significant structure in the next 12 months. And that's one. Two, there's also that issue of who will bail the cat, who will really champion this movement to make these people coalesce together. One of the challenges with elites like us is that we talk a lot and we do very, very little. Even a young man I was talking with recently, he says, let me first of all set my house in order before I face this thing. So the courage, the boldness, the competence to put this thing together, it doesn't seem to be there. What's your opinion on that?
See, first of all, I've already explained that the other 16 houses right now belong to some people. It's in control of some people. So if you are outside, no matter what you do by yourself, you cannot build a house between now and the next election. I'm talking about taking over an existing house. And I've said the only house that can become a third force is the house where the house owners are finally convinced that instead of owning 100% of a tiny party that is going nowhere, they are better off reducing their influence in that party and admitting everybody, including you and I, to come and join, to take part in primaries and have proper elections and be democratic. And I've already told you that there are discussions in that area because all it takes for somebody to decide. It's like I gave the example of, doesn't matter any business. When people are ready to be acquired, they begin to talk in a different tone because they've realized that, hey, I can either stay small and be relevant largely, or I can do something and transform my party to that third force. Only probably 2, 3, or 4 of them are thinking that way. And I hope that at least one of them gets there and truly opens themselves up. So the point I'm making to you is that it's not a case of just saying people outside the party can force their way into a party. If you force your way into a party that will not have you, then you can't achieve anything. Only a party that has reformed itself and will say all of you are welcome and we're going to become the third force. And that's what I say can happen. But even if it does not happen, we can still put pressure if we get more active. There are many movements. At the end of the day, if we have a proper election, which the Electoral Act should help to ensure, then even APC or PDP cannot be overconfident. The other thing I will mention also about this third force possibility now is that, you see, I also have a theory that there's a particular size which a political party in Nigeria gets to. They get bigger and bigger and bigger. You get to a particular size when you're so big that almost the only thing left is for the party to implode. And there's a reason for that. Let's take an example. I know you're from Edo State. Imagine that in Edo North, all the big men go and join APC, and they all have their eyes on Senate, and there are 40 of them, so they're all in APC together. Only one person can win the primary. So if 40 of them are in APC because of targeting Senate, only one of them is going to succeed. So what matters is whether the other 39 will remain in APC for them to remain one, or the party will implode after one person gets what he's looking for and the rest don't get the expectations. What used to happen before is that many politicians, if they lost out in primary, they joined one of these smaller parties just to contest for one seat or the other. So many times they won, you have the records. They win on that party ticket, they beat APC or PDP. But then guess what? They hurriedly go back after winning to APC or PDP because the governor or whoever is the kingpin there now welcomes them back, reimburses the expenditure or things like that, and so you're welcome back to the fold. So, but the point I'm making is that there's a size to which APC is getting that if care is not taken, it can implode. PDP itself imploded, people have forgotten. PDP did not become a shadow of itself by choice. It happened that way because some people moved out. Why did they move out? Those same dynamics might make some people move out of APC this time. It's about unfulfilled expectations or unfulfilled dreams. Everybody cannot get their dreams fulfilled if you're all looking for the same thing. So that's why some of us have been advising these other parties that could be a third force. Why don't you make sure you do your own thing differently? And if these parties, any of them implodes, you can be the beneficiary. But not for them to come there and repeat the same nonsense of trying to subvert democracy. They've got to come back and play by the rules. So that the more important thing is that party that is going to be a third force has to be a party that believes in due process, that believes in rules, that believes in democracy, that believes in conducting proper primaries and so on. And then also many other people can join politics. Why would you join politics to go and take part in a primary in Anambra that you know that there will be no primary? We want to waste your money running around, and then you hear reports like somebody was in APC or is it Delta or somewhere. Even the venue of the primary, he didn't know. He went to the wrong place. They held the primary somewhere else and declared the results. That kind of thing naturally leads to implosion. So what I'm saying is that it's a combination of people on top misbehaving, people at the bottom behaving better, trying to learn from the mistakes of those on top. It's through that kind of process in life that you get movement in two directions. The third force begins to rise as these ones begin to destroy themselves.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question, and I hope you'll be able to answer me. And let's assume that you where you stand, you are able to make things happen, and you're able to instruct Nigerians, and we expect that they will obey what you've said. What are the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things you would tell us to do now to make sure that we choose the right leaders at every level come 2023? I know you say that one of them is forcing the people to do electoral act and this and that, but I know that we've had a lot of challenge forcing the present government to do a few things. You know, at a time, we didn't even know who to talk to within the government. We didn't know who to put pressure on. There was, for me, I don't know about you, it was a little bit amorphous. Nobody seemed to be taking decisions. You know, you go here, you go there, you don't know who to say, I want to deal with you guys. So what would you ask us to do? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or whatever things we should do as a nation or as a people?
When you say as a nation, as a people, okay, I think let me make it one thing very clear. When we're talking about leadership and picking the right leaders, then we all have to insist that it does not matter who comes out to contest a position. Again, I'm talking about any important elective position. It doesn't matter who the person is. We will subject the person to serious questioning. We are going to create an environment where people will be grilled. People would have to answer questions. I mentioned earlier, we will always do background checks. We will examine their track record. The same things that I told you that I was doing when I said I didn't think Mr. X or Mr. Y was good enough. But the other thing that's very important that I'm saying that we must do is that if we create an environment where people begin to know that, hey, the days of dodging every interview, dodging every examination, and just putting your papers in and you win an election, that those days look like they're over. Do you know that it also begins to affect people's minds as to who comes out to contest key positions? If you know you're going to be grilled properly, then you become a little bit circumspect that should I come out and expose myself to this? Already there's some of that happening. I'm sure you've noticed also that even before INEC has declared the race, on TV, interviews, and so on, when candidates come forward, they are grilling them like the person is applying for a job and needs their endorsement. But I think the whole nation has to move into that mode, that mindset of asking everybody hard questions so we can separate the grain from the chaff. If we have a system where you don't need to say anything, you just print a poster, have some people run up and down the place calling your name, and then you get elected, then we're in trouble. Now, but who are the group, what demography can ensure this thing I'm saying we need to do? If you look at Nigeria, the concentration is with young people. In 2015, we did opinion polls on Anap Foundation, and I can tell you categorically, the polls are still with me. Most of the young people were voting APC. In fact, it was the more elderly population that for presidency were voting PDP. We had the breakdown in demography and so on. Now, what was the issue? The older people had a concern that, hey, we don't think this candidate is up to it. The younger people were, at the time, were more gullible. They didn't make a distinction between posters and claims and people speaking for somebody else and so on. But guess what? Now there's anger in the land. Everybody's angry. All those young people who think they were taken for a ride in 2015 or in other elections, that they voted for wrong candidates, now they've paid the price. Unemployment today amongst youth has leapt up threefold. So everybody's angry. Now they're angry. There's only one thing they're committed to, which is that perhaps they will not repeat that mistake. So the educated youth today in Nigeria, I don't see them again voting for somebody whom they never heard say anything, somebody who was never grilled, somebody who can't answer one question. I don't think it's going to happen. And if we have a proper electoral process, at the end of the day, the bulk of them, they're not in political parties, at least not yet. But the educated youth are the majority. So what we're talking about is awakening a gentle giant. When they take their rightful place and they get their PVCs and they know they're in the majority and they decide they like somebody, whoever they decide they like, that person wins because they've got the numbers. Let's look at, take any state of your choice. What's happening now is that voter turnout is a pittance. Most of the youths will tell you, and I like people who are honest, I didn't bother to register, or I registered, I didn't bother to pick up my PVC and all that. So what we're trying to do is to educate people and say, you know what? That action of failing to pick up your PVC is what has left some people in power. So you go back and do the needful. And if you say you're angry, which many of them say they are, then the only thing you should tell yourself is that never again are you going to vote for anybody who does not convince you that is up to the task, mentally, physically, in terms of integrity, in terms of background, in terms of knowledge, competence, everything. Somebody who can execute. So what I'm trying to say is that part of what we're looking for is to make the voting population more demanding, so that getting people's support. See, in 2015, I keep on going back to 2015, many youths tell me now themselves that they gave away their votes cheaply. They didn't know what they were voting for, and they voted. and many of them got disenchanted. This time around, we're saying, don't get disenchanted. Get your PVC, come out and vote. But this time, make sure you know who you're voting for. Challenge the people, ask them the right questions. You'll be able to separate the men from the boys. If somebody is past it, it will show. If somebody is up to the task, the more we grill him, the more it will show. So I'm saying that a combination of more youths agreeing to take part in the process of voting, coming back to get their PVCs and taking part, will also propel many better candidates forward. Because it's true that people say, oh, but they are buying votes. How many votes are they buying? Look at the numbers. What happens is that with a very poor turnout, somebody can get 10% or 5%. If he buys 5%, he has won. We've got to change the game where if he wants to buy votes, he has to, 5%, buying 5% of the votes will get you nowhere. And that can only happen if all these youths, beyond being angry, beyond complaining about everything that's wrong with their country, decide to get politically active. And that's why some of us are working hard at that, to encourage many young people to come back and register. Even some have come back saying, oh, excuse me, sir, I heard you. Guess what? I've registered. This is my slip they gave me. I said, okay, well done. But please do one more thing. They say, what? How many youths do you know? He says, many. So since I convinced you to register, why don't you go and convince 4 other youths? Do you know already if you have come back saying, excuse me, sir, guess what? I convinced 4 other youths already. So then tell each of the 4 to convince another 4. So the point I'm making is that we have to get some sort of a movement like that, where young people realize that this country is theirs. They are the majority. Whether we like it or not, Itwa, you and I belong to 5% of the population. So what I'm telling you is that 95% of Nigerians are younger than you today. And they're the ones that matter.
So we're saying that we really need to work very hard at mobilizing the young people and getting them involved and getting them on the page. With your own experience, I know you've been doing quite a bit of work in that area. Are we succeeding? Are you succeeding? Are you making traction? What do you think?
I would say it's early days yet, and let me tell you why. Everything what I do in my life, I always think about 4 things, right message, right messenger, right place, right time. So even if you say the message is that the youth should go and pick up their PVCs, they should get politically active, they should go and vote, I think the correct time to make that case, to make that appeal is now. So we only began it end November. Why end? Please, let me assure you, you know me very well. If we began something in end November, we could have begun it in April last year or January last year. But guess what? I told myself no. That my understanding, and I've worked all my life with young people, is that in January last year, the election was too far away. So you'll be sounding like somebody talking nonsense. In January last year, telling them to come and get their PVCs. You had to wait until, like the white man says, you strike when the iron is hot. When you're getting nearer the election season, only then can they listen to you. So the point I'm making is that we are just entering now the election season. And I'll confess, that's also why I agreed to come on this program now, because this is the time that people are listening. I don't like talking to people when nobody's listening. You discussing the subject at the wrong time. It's a waste of my time. So if I want to discuss choosing leaders, political processes, I want to do it at the beginning of an election season. The timing should be right, because even when you get the timing right and you have the right message and the right messenger, you may not succeed. But if you get the timing wrong, so in effect, I'm saying that 9 months ago was too early. 6 months ahead is too late. The right time is now to begin a process.
That's very comforting. And I do hope that we will be able to make the impact and really strike while the iron. And I want to assure you that you have all my support, and I will find a way by which we can truly work together in this process to make sure that we awaken this sleeping giant. But a question that some of them have also asked me, because I must confess that I have engaged quite a bit of them here and there in this discussion, is, okay, no problem. You've told us to get our PVC and blah, blah, blah. We will get it, we will try, and so on and so forth. You've told us to vote. Who do we vote for? We've looked at the landscape. We can't see anybody. And I'm going to ask you, if you can, I know you don't want to talk about persons, but you can talk generally as to the people who have shown up in the landscape. What do you think? We don't see anybody.
Yes.
We don't see anybody
Yes,
to vote for. We don't have hope.
Yes, you see all this talk about you don't see anybody. Has the race even started? INEC has already warned people that the race has not even begun officially. In any case, I said, let us broaden this discussion. When you say, who do you vote for? Don't you have a local government? Don't you care who is your LGA chairman? Who is your LGA councillor? Don't you care who represents you in the State House of Assembly? Don't you care who represents you in the House of Rep? Don't you care who's your senator? There are so many positions. Are you telling me that in all these positions, you can't find anybody to vote for? Or your only focus is just presidency? I agree, presidency is important, but do you want a hooligan to represent you in the House of Assembly? A hooligan to represent you in the House of Rep? And let me tell you one more thing about the youth vote. The youth vote potentially is so large that they will easily dictate things like who enters the House of Assembly, House of Rep, especially if people are organized in a geographical area. One of the people in my group, or this Go Nigeria that we came together to encourage youths, is a friend from the Northeast called Waziri, Ibrahim Waziri. His CV shows that at age 25, he ran for elections, House of Rep, and he won. So the kind of thing I'm talking about is that our youths have to realize that if they all get politically active, the 25-year-old, the 30-year-old can win House of Rep. The 30-year-old can get into local government. So that let's stop narrowing aside. How can you, in a nation of 200 million people, you leave all the positions to all kinds of people and say because you can't find who to vote for president? Excuse me, I'm interested in who represents me. When I vote in elections, I vote in all the 5 elections. That is, in the major elections. I vote for House of Assembly, House of Rep. Sometimes I'll be honest with you. No, I would lie to you. What for? Sometimes I don't even know who the person running for the House of Assembly is. Sometimes, so I rely on the party affiliation. Okay, this is the party person, and I think I want this party. I prefer this party to the other. So the point I'm making is that I've said it earlier, if we keep on talking about only one position, I don't know who to vote for president. So therefore, you allow a hooligan to represent you in House of Rep and Senate, then I'm sorry for you. So, because you have to get serious about all the positions. And guess what? Even for president, again, I don't want to make it sound as if we are saying that, oh, we can't find anybody. Even in the major political parties, I've even mentioned before that there are candidates, potential candidates. We cannot pretend that in a country of 200 million people, we have nobody. That is almost insulting. The process is just starting. And if the youth galvanize themselves properly and their numbers are there, and we have a good electoral process, that itself will bring out many more candidates for all sorts of posts, all the way from the state to the federal to the very top. Because at the end of the day, people believe in the process, then the risks are less and they can take part. But because I told you from the beginning that this is not about trying to run down people or run down names, I don't want to get into the business of saying, oh, there's Mr. X in APC. I think he's competent. Or there's Mr. Y in PDP. I think it's competent because it becomes a distraction. It's better we talk in the abstract, understand the issues and the principles and the processes that we will use to bring about change than reducing it to mentioning one name here, one name there. But I think I will just deviate and mention one name, just to embarrass the fellow. And I'm saying this because it happened somewhere. I went somewhere, somebody told me, the problem with the Southeast is that they have no candidate. They have no candidate. I said, I said, why do they have no candidate? He said, that There's nobody. I said, you think a whole geopolitical zone in Nigeria has nobody? I said, I can even mention somebody of 50 that I think has the competence a lot more than many people occupying top posts from the Southeast. He told me like who, they were all interested. I would embarrass the fellow. I mentioned Osita Chidoka. He's 50 years old. Call him into your studio, ask him any question, grill him. He's been involved before, exposed. He has been involved in execution and so on. Now you can go to every zone and name people who are 50 like him, or people who are 40, or people who are 60, people who are 70. Let's not go into this mindset of a country of 200 million people. There's nobody. It is the processes that will throw up, get many more people encouraged to come out and take part. So in the same way I've mentioned one person from the Southeast, I can mention somebody of his age from the South, somebody from the Southwest. Any age you give me in Nigeria, I can mention people that I believe are competent in almost every zone. When I put together this Anap Foundation, this group of 18 people that we say we're doing Go Nigeria to encourage the youth, I can tell you the 18 people were from 6 geopolitical zones. My biggest problem in each geopolitical zone was, how do I pick only 3 people from this zone? Because those I have from each zone, people that I think are competent and knowledgeable, the list is so long. So at the end of the day, you pick 3 people, not because you're saying they're the only 3 people in the zone, but because they represent, you also wanted a cross shade of experiences and exposure. So you cannot pick 18 lawyers. You cannot pick 18 doctors. You can only pick 1 doctor. You cannot pick 18 musicians and so on. You cannot pick 18 bishops. But the point I'm making to you is that let's not go into this mindset of telling ourselves that in a whole geopolitical zone, you can find somebody. In every zone in Nigeria, I can find somebody. But I won't name, I will go back to our principle of not naming names, needlessly. But there is no zone that does not have competent people. If anything, Nigeria's problem is that many zones have organized their affairs in a way that some people who are not very competent have put in place some structures that are hoping to suppress everybody else, and only they can rise. And like I said, those guys unluckily don't have the numbers. The demography shows that it's the youth that have the numbers. So it shouldn't really be the youth begging elderly people give us a chance. If the youth register en masse, they will demand their rights and they will be well represented in the future government.
Okay, we're going to be throwing the platform open for questions. If you want to ask some question, please raise up your hand electronically and we will call you. I see 1 or 2 people there also wanting to ask questions, but I'm going to ask a question and then call 1 or 2 people to join me and then have you answer those questions. You've mentioned something that I consider very germane, and inadvertently you've sort of done it in that choosing your 18 people, you went through some kind of list. Is there any value? Is there any value, and is it possible at all? Is that part of the thinking that people can come together and begin to suggest a few people here and there, throw names for different levels, Senate, House of Assembly here and there, and try to encourage these people to come out? Because some of these people, they somehow are reluctant, they're not interested, they've not considered themselves. If I was talking to somebody in my office just before I came, it's a banker of some sort, came to visit me. And after listening to him, he spoke. I said, you know what? Why don't you run for office? Why don't you run for
Which office? Which office?
Whichever office. I wasn't specific.
Yeah.
As of that time. I think, yeah, I did say governor of his state. I think he comes from Abia State or so. Why don't you run for governor of your state or whatever it is? And then he shook his head, looked here, looked there. It was clear that he hadn't really thought too deeply about it. Is there a possibility of some people actually coming together, identifying talent, identifying good people, and throwing those names up? Do you think it's something that is practicable, or you think you need to wait until people chest out and offer themselves?
No, you see, you cannot just be throwing up names anyhow, because our elections in Nigeria is about political parties. So If I've already given the example of Anambra, if all the heavyweights in Anambra got together and they were marginalized and somebody was handpicked with no primary as the winner, what's the point of you and I calling 20 names to go and give them in APC Anambra? They will suffer the same fate. So the point I'm making is that I keep on begging people. It's no use saying, I want to run for this, I want to run for president. Which party? Elections in Nigeria are between political parties. If APC won't have you, and if in PDP you have no chance, where do you want to go? And also, I think let me make one other comment. I think we should be careful not to repeat past mistakes, in the sense that I get frightened when everybody's thinking about president. People that you think should be running for House of Rep are telling you they want to be president. People that should be running for Senate, they're running for governor, be president. Please let us be careful. I've said already that I think if you want to run for president of Nigeria, you should look yourself in the mirror and say, and come and argue tell people why you think of 200 million Nigerians, you are the one that is uniquely or the best placed. You've got the track record. Let me give an example. I personally don't think in our own system here in Nigeria, a country with no institutions, that you should put somebody make somebody president who has never led anything before in his life. Your first position of leadership cannot be president of Nigeria. I'm sorry. It doesn't matter how brilliant you are. You have never in your life before led anything. So which means that we don't know anything about the leadership style. And let me tell you something as well, which I'm sure you know about leadership. Until you're a leader, even you don't fully know your leadership style. People will tell you that when you make somebody a leader for the first time, some of them change. So the point I'm making that it is dangerous to catch somebody because the person speaks well, the person gives all kinds of makes promises alone, and you make the person your president. When he enters that office, is when his leadership style, he himself will discover it, and we will discover it. I think it is important that before we call somebody and say this person should be president of Nigeria, apart from all these issues of competence, knowledge, integrity, courage, I'll add courage now and so on, you must almost be able to write a book on the person's leadership style. Because you're not going to make somebody president and discover after the fact. And let me tell you one thing as well, just one more comment and then I'll stop and take questions. Do you know that a simple thing, I've seen people who have disappointed me when as soon as you gave them a big office, their first position of leadership, the only thing they did was to surround themselves almost 100% with their kinsmen. Should you make that kind of person president of Nigeria? There are people who surround themselves only. So which means that the people who in their mind reduce Nigeria or believe that it's okay to only surround themselves with those from their narrow base. Now, conversely, if somebody has been a leader before, and you see that each time he was given a position of leadership, he surrounded himself with people who are competent from all over Nigeria. That is comforting. And I also think, I will say something as well. Now, this gets very controversial. I think Nigeria is a fragile nation. And when the presidency has been in the North for 8 years, I think, my personal opinion, I think also to help whoever is going to be that president to further reinforce and achieve unity, it's important, where possible, for it to shift south. You see, especially, and if that need becomes even more urgent, if a previous occupant of the position appears to have further divided the nation, there's a healing process that can be accelerated if you give others a sense of belonging. So take a party like PDP. Historically, they've zoned presidency north or south. I don't think it's a bad idea, but they never really, people have forgotten the history. There was never a time that PDP, when they zoned it to the north, they zoned it to northwest or northeast or north central. It was the whole of the north, 3 geopolitical zones, bring out your best candidates. Likewise, when they zoned it to the south, in 1979. It was the whole of the South. People have forgotten something. Oh, PDP zoned it to the Southwest. How could they have zoned it to the Southwest when in the primaries? Obasanjo ran, Ekweme ran, and Obasanjo defeated Ekweme. So clearly they opened it up to all these zones from the South. Indeed, I think Abubakar Arabi or somebody refused to accept and said he had the right to contest, went to courts. They said, no problem, then come. But I think it's important. Look, and also let me just make it clear. Before people start saying things like, but in law, anybody has the right to run. Yes, you have the right to run. But I'm talking about in terms of achieving, in terms of creating the environment where the incumbent even survives or can survive more easily. I think it's important for us to have that sense of, if where possible, of allowing it to move from north to south and south back to north, as opposed to keeping it in one place. That's my personal opinion. There are countries that run their affairs that way, where they think there are major, regional differences and so on, and they rotate it around, around the place. It's not because they are foolish. So people should not, because of their personal ambition, think that, oh, nothing matters. When I get in there, I will deliver and so on. If you get in there in an environment that creates so much hostility, that people have given up on you and so on, you can't deliver anything. You'll be fighting fires from the first day, and we don't need that. Now, where Nigeria is now, economy, which I'm sorry to say is in a very poor shape, federal government has even lost fiscal viability and so on. You want a president who can hit the ground running with maximum support.
Okay. Let's take a few questions. There's one area I was thinking of just now, but let me yield the floor to other people. We have 3-4 people who want to ask questions. I'll take them all together and ask you to please respond to the 4 questions, one after the other. My appeal to them is to forget the pleasantries. Just go straight to the question. We're all well greeted and we're happy to be here, this and that. Don't even say that you've had a good talk or conversation. Just mention your name if you want, and then ask your question or make your comment. 30 seconds, please. Otaje Faye, Farouk Abbas, my young political friend. There's someone here called Fash. I'll take you. And also Bimbo Ashu, who also tried to run for office in Ogun State last time around. Let's take those 4 very quickly. Please, again, go straight to the question, unmute yourself, mention your name, and yield the floor to somebody else. Thank you. Otaji.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, sirs. Sir, my name is Otaji Fairansom. You mentioned that we should develop a template to bring the best qualities of leaders to the top. And you have already listed some of the qualities to look out for. And then demand that this is what we want. And if we demand it, we get it. My question, therefore, is, after we create these templates, who do we demand it from? Is it the political party or INEC? Who has the power to implement the templates? What are the possible outcomes if we demand from party or from INEC? Thank you, sir. Over to Abbas.
Okay, good afternoon, sir. My name is Farouk Abbas. I just want to make a comment. I agree with what the speaker said regarding ALG or Nigerians focusing a lot on the presidential elections and 2023 elections. For example, I believe that we should be playing a lot of role in the off-season elections. I'm from Osun State. Our governorship election is going to be taking place in July. The primaries for my political party is going to be taking place in March. And I discovered that, to my chagrin, a particular aspirant running for governorship in my party, I started taking some delegates to be swearing on oaths with fetish objects. And in my ward, we have about 9 delegates. I had to talk to them, and I prevented 4 of them from going to go and swear on those oaths. And they gave them 10,000 naira per delegate. So what I want to implore ALG and members here is that we all have circle of influence in our communities. Some of our relatives are members of all these political parties. They are delegates in these parties. We can talk to them that when they come and meet you to swear on oath for 10,000 naira that you will vote for a candidate, don't swear on oath. Don't swear on oath, because once they swear, well, if you have 1,000 delegates for governorship election in my local government and you're able to swear 500 or 900 on oaths, you have won the election. No matter how I shout, no matter how I campaign, no matter how I speak grammar, I can't win that election anymore. So let us focus on all these off-season elections, because if we elect an incompetent governor in Osun State, that incompetent governor will also support an incompetent presidential candidate, and we cannot win the presidential election. So like the lecturer said, let us focus on the grassroots and focus on off-season election. Let us invite all those governorship candidates. Some of them cannot communicate orally, they cannot communicate in writing. So let's not focus too much attention on the presidential and look at how we can grab power at the local level, at the ward level, at the unit level, because a lot of shady things are taking place there that if we don't stop all those things, we'll just be speaking grammar from now to next year and won't be able to penetrate the grassroots. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Farouk. Those comments are noted, and the speaker will speak to them as appropriate. Fash?
Yes, good afternoon, sir. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I heard you very clearly when you mentioned some of the capabilities that we should assess candidates by. One capability that I felt you left out was empathy, because and this goes back to one of your interviews you had granted in the past. To be perfectly honest, if you do not get a leader who is empathetic enough to the plight of the society and understands that say in our society right now, where we've got record levels of unemployment, high inflation rates, and is able to empathetically design or prefer solutions and policies that would address this, I think such a leader really doesn't deserve to be there. Then now to the two questions I wanted to ask you. What's your own thought of the circumstances and the discussions going on around the Electoral Act? Do you think that the direct primaries or the indirect primaries or even the consensus model is really it should be instilled in the act for it to then pass? And then secondly, when you mentioned that the debate or the conversation around canvassing voters was too early to begin, say the early periods of last year, I tend to disagree, because an example that could be given is what happened in the US with Stacey Abrams, where she began the canvassing from right when Donald Trump had won the elections, and all of those efforts that she put into canvassing the electorates to pick up their to become politically engaged made the difference. That's the only reason why the Senate eventually flipped in favor of the Democrats, and several other examples like that are there to be used to advocate for why citizens really need to be politically engaged and active right from way before the political season commences. And when you say just get your PVC to vote for the candidates, in a way, what would happen is the political parties will just give us the candidates, and we will technically only be endorsing the candidates that come forth, as opposed to being involved in the political parties and determining who gets nominated or who gets the primary tickets, if regardless of who they are, at least if they are competent, then when the general elections come, we'll be picking one or the other who are originally, very bright and brilliant candidates. So those are my questions and comments for you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Fash. I saw Bimbo Ashiru. I don't know if it's
yeah, good evening. I'm still here.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, actually, we have a lot to do in this country, and I will give you a good example. Growing up, chairmen of local government are men of high integrity, people that have proven in their chosen career. I mean, I will mention names. Chief Mr. Nabanjo, when I was growing up, was the chairman of the local government, and he did a lot of things because he brought the wealth of his experience and he turned things around. Then he became the governor, and he did very well. But the point is this: nobody is even interested in being chairman of local government. It must come from bottom, and that is one aspect that I'm talking about. That we must be looking at who becomes the chairman of our local government, because the state governors, they've actually hijacked local government. They now appoint their cronies to local government, and not only that, most of the state governors, I'm sorry to say, we have today, they are not ready for the job. They don't even have an idea of what they are doing, because somebody called them and said, you are going to be the governor. So they are not even prepared for the office. So those are the things we need to look at. I mean, from my own experience, I mean, I knew, I mean, like Mr. Peter Dai said, they would do this called primaries, and nothing will happen. It was just, I mean, if you did it in Anambra and you said 250,000 people voted for someone for primaries, then the man should be like won the election. It was far bottom, number 3. So clearly something, because all the people that they claimed that voted for him for the primaries, they should have come out to vote for him during the election. So, I mean, 250,000 people voted for you for primaries. So what happened to them during the election? They ran away, or what happened? So it clearly shows that there's some problem with integrity here. Then the issue of presidency. We are making so much noise about this president. I was at a forum on Saturday, and I told them, we need a madman to come out who doesn't care about anything, who is not willing to probably fill his own pocket, who is willing to run the economy properly. And I always tell people, North or South. If we say we want South, it doesn't mean it should be Southwest. It should be South. South should be South. So someone from the North or from the South. So by the time we start doing that and looking for people, I think amongst this group, we can start throwing names and we start getting funding, because it's difficult. Another problem is this: for you to get the tickets, I paid 22.5 million naira for gubernatorial ticket, and nothing happened. Nothing happened. I mean, if you go to court, you're going to spend money too. So the point is this: we need to start looking for people that we can even fund, we can support, and let the person come out. All the names that they are throwing around, some of them are all charlatans. And we are trying to recycle the same set of people. No, we have so many people who can do this thing, who can run this thing. Young people, dynamic people, but they are willing to do it, but they are scared. Because like somebody said that they will tell them to come and drink blood or do something. No, nobody, I didn't drink blood, but I was ready and I faced the government did. But I mean, what happens after? They will use their own strategy to get rid of you, and you will win. It's happening now in Ekiti. The primaries. It's going to happen in Osun. So these are the problems. We need to have people. I mean, this forum, we can start using it to canvas and start getting people who can run this thing. I mean, that's my own little contribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my dear brother Otumba. Let me yield the floor to Mr. Peterside and let him respond to these 4 questions, and then we'll take another set of 4.
Yes, so I will just run through them quickly because some of them were comments, so I won't ignore them, but I will just add something. First of all, somebody asked about, who do you give the template to? We have to create the templates, also the intelligentsia, and we're giving it to political parties. They can disregard it and bring out a hooligan, no problem. But guess what? At the end of the day, they'll meet us on election day. So if we're talking about parties and we have a choice of candidates, there's something to which they call tactical voting, which some of us will recommend very much when the elections come. Tactical voting in the UK was how they brought down, the government of Theresa May. Some people got together, say for this particular seat for MP, the candidates are conservative, liberal, Labour, and so on. But guess what? The conservative man is the incumbent. We will all vote for Labour because the Labour person has the best chance. Simply by passing that message around, in several cases, all the swing voters voted Labour and defeated the conservative. In the next zone, where they felt that the liberal candidate was the second strongest, they all voted for the second person. So there was a decision taken, an organized group that was guiding people that since our aim is to topple the incumbents, for every single seat, every position, we will all identify who is the best option outside of that incumbent, and let many of us agree to back that person. Many people, on account of that movement, got into the parliament, and the Tories lost so many seats that Theresa May had to go in the end because the colleagues were furious with her. So there's tactical voting, which you can use to enforce this issue of people who don't respect our templates. So what I'm saying is that in parts of Edo State, if a party brings out somebody that does not remotely qualify in our opinion, it's enough for all of us to agree to vote for his strongest opponent and pull him down. It's allowed. And somebody talked about all these fetish oaths and so on. Here, I will quote somebody, the late MKO Abiola, somebody I had tremendous respect for. I got lucky enough to get to meet him very well and become close to him after the June 12 elections were annulled, because I was very much in his camp, supporting and arguing against the annulment, writing against it in papers, taking personal risk. So one of the times I met him one-on-one, he told me something which I want to mention here in relation to all these people taking money and so on. MPO told me, the way he talks, he told me, look, Atedo, when I told him I was concerned, I heard that people were taking money so that they would sell him in June 12th, his supporters were going to, some of them were being offered money and so on. So he laughed and told me, you know what, Atedo, He said even his own people, he has said, never tell a Yoruba man, he was Yoruba, of course, never tell a Yoruba man not to take money from your opponent. See, because that's a difficult instruction for him to obey, especially if you have no money for him. He said, but guess what? What you must do, tell him to take money from your opponent, but to follow his conscience. You see, all these fetish and oath and so on arises, and I hope people like Ito and Co will address it in future sermons, arises because people believe in those things. Let me assure you, if you offer me $1 million today and tell me that if I take it, I must vote for you, and I obey MKO, I take the $1 million, I have the confidence to go into that polling booth and vote for somebody else. To hell with your fetish. Those things can't work on me. I don't believe in all that rubbish. If people with that fetish power and so on were so strong, they will determine everything that happens in the world. Nigeria will win AFCON, we will win the World Cup, we'll win everything. Where is their power? People get themselves trapped in a mindset where people come and make a fool of you, tell you that I've given you 10,000. If you don't vote for me, you will die, and you believe the person. Who gave him that power to kill me? The day I will die, only the Lord controls. Not some idiot who gave me 10,000 naira. So MKO is right. Take his money, pocket it, and vote your conscience. And we'll be telling that to the youths. If any idiot comes and offers you 5,000 naira, take it for it. Ask him to bring more. After taking it, vote your conscience. So that is what is going to help us to get to our destination. So people will now start getting scared that if it means people will take my money and still vote as they like. Yes. Let me see how they're going to be able to determine that when I enter the polling booth, I didn't vote for that man. And that involves some mentoring, educating people to make them believe that this riffraff talking about fetish and oath cannot control your life. Unless you allow him to control your life. It's your decision, it's your choice. Okay? Then you're talking about Electoral Act. From what I know, I hope I'm right, there's been some progress. We've heard that House of Rep, Senate, they've come together, they've ironed out their differences and come up with a version that still captures the bulk of what many of us were looking for. Most important thing is, how do you count? Where do you count votes? How do you transmit results? That's the most important thing. But I'm not going to duck the question on direct primaries or indirect primaries, because I argued, and people in the House of Rep and Senate know my views, that it's a mistake for a ruling political party to be trying to put in place a law that ties the hand of every political party to conduct primaries its own way. Where does that happen in most civilized societies? In the UK, the Labour have their own way of choosing their leaders. The Tories have their own way. You look after yourself, I look after myself. So what the law should do is to recognize direct primaries, indirect primaries. I think they even threw in consensus. Let each political party decide. If you love a party, if you love indirect primaries, then join a party that wants indirect primaries. If you want direct primaries, join a party that advocates for direct primaries, and then go and try your luck there. And let me also let you know about one thing. Some of us are too old and too experienced to believe that there's a magic wand somewhere. Direct primary, wonderful. Indirect primary, wonderful or terrible. There's no such thing. If you tell Ito and I to bastardize a direct primary, we both know how to do it. If you tell us to bastardize indirect primary, we know how to do it. So when your people are shouting that, oh, the solution is indirect primary, I said, excuse me, do you know what it means to conduct indirect primaries for governorship in just one state? It means that on the same day at about the same time, people are going to come out all over the state. Let me tell you ways to subvert all that. If Ito is from Edo North and he knows that he's strong in Edo North, when they're lining up in Edo South, just send thugs to be going there and throwing all kinds of things and scattering the place. What do you achieve? There's perfect voting where you are strong, where you are weak, you're helping to fire bullets in the air, scare people away, they all run away. So you can mess up any system. And that's why it's important that political parties, let each party decide how they want to handle their primaries. Indirect primaries too are a major challenge, especially for something like presidency or for governorship, which involves the whole state. So the bigger the state, the more difficult to manage. But you can manipulate either. So let's not kid ourselves that one is perfect and the other is not. The other comment that somebody made was, that's implying that where would the youth go and so on. Hang on a second. There are two types of youths. There are those that will just vote and go home, pick up their PVC, vote and go home. There are many other youths. The reason for them engaging with some of us and so on, they're saying they want some guidance beyond voting. They want to run for State House of Assembly. They want to enter local government. They want to go to House of Rep. Yeah, so those types of youths too will join parties. But it does not make sense for them to join the party where they will not have a chance, where the primaries are decided by one big man. It will not make sense. That's why we need that third force, where people can go in there and really test their strength, campaign and see whether people will vote for them genuinely. There'll be proper primaries. So we need a bit of that. But youths, quite a few youths will take part this time. Not all will be bold and will say they want to become president. But there will many positions, people are setting their sights. And correctly too, because it's their country and they must try and take it back. Then, then also I think that was from Fash. Then Bimbo also mentioned local government chairman and so, of course, local government is important. All these people it's important and it's true. That's why I also say, why don't we make sure that at every stage, at every level, we are putting the right pressures, getting the young people out. They are the majority. And let me say one more thing about those smaller elections. They're also easier to win because usually the turnout is poor. So as soon as it's a sort of a group of you in some area or something decide that you want to come out and back one young man, you'll be surprised. Go and look at the results all over the country. Sometimes somebody wins with 1,000 votes. Somebody scores in total 5,000 votes and wins something. Because there's no turnout. So the youth shouldn't underestimate their strength. If you come out en masse, you can change the game, even through a smaller party. So I won't make any comments about the other things because it's all part of the same general discussion. So we can take more questions.
Okay, so let's have a few more questions. The following will come one after the other. Charles Iyore, Samuel Dada, Boyega Ademiluyi, Tunji Aderi, and then please ask Morgan Bob Manuel. Those 5 questions, very quickly, you know the rules, straight to the question, no courtesies needed, and then straight to your comment also. Thank you. Is Charles there?
Oh, I see. Oh, thank you. I just put the comments in.
Okay.
What I would like to say, and I've said this very many times, is that when we talk about dividends of democracy, the dividends that we haven't got since independence are very many. At independence, communities have hospitals and maternities. Now they don't have them. On indigenization, before indigenization, we had shops that had escalators. Now we don't have them. On deregulating the banking system, the system was working. Now I don't know if it works. On Bureau for Public Enterprises, I don't know if the companies have been enterprise have now changed. So my question really is, can we begin to look for those who are successful and promote them? I have two in mind: the JAM Director General and the Director General of Customs. Let's force them into some positions. That's what will happen. Is this an option we can look at, Atedo?
All right. Thank you, Charles. I think that's noted and we responded to. Samuel Dada, quickly, please.
Okay, thank you, sir. Yeah, I wanted to ask, sir, I don't know if it is my impression that these ruling parties, both PDP and APC, make it a calculated effort to just make the country the way it is when it comes to citizens' identity database. Because we all know that if a child is getting up to 18 years and he has his own database and every other identity card, the voting card and everything being given by the local government, And this will persuade people to go for election. So what makes it difficult for these ruling parties since 1999, even though they cross carpet from one party to another, to make us to have a standard biometric, a national one that everybody we know who is coming to the country? Like in the northern part, what is creating this Boko Haram was that some people came in to vote for the president and they were promised money and certain things, and they were not being answered, and they started killing people. This came out from the late Obadiah Malaifa. So you as a politician, sir, what do you think is really happening? What make it difficult for these ruling parties to get us a stable electricity and a stable database of every citizen so that we can know who is winning the country? And whenever is election, we will know how election goes so that electoral heart will be done in the right path. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, good evening. All right, so I have two questions. You mentioned that there were issues between that zoning would help the fragile economy. But my question, if you had if you were like a dilemma between competence and zoning, which one would you choose, competence or zoning? Secondly, at the last election, I think that was 2019. My colleagues and I, where I grew up in an estate, predominantly Igbo, we were determined to elect a particular person, and we decided to actually defend our vote. And then on the day of the elections, we all voted and we decided to stand down there. And then 20 minutes after voting, we said we're going to stay the whole day. 20 minutes after, I think some other guys from around the area, they got the fact that a lot of people were winning in this section. And then they sent touts to come and disrupt. Even the policemen that were meant to protect us, everybody ran away. And so it was disrupted. And so after that, I think it was a House of Assembly election. So after that, a lot of my guys were not like, there was no future. How do we do? We had planned and we had strategized, we had saved money for this particular guy. And then everything was disrupted. There was pandemonium everywhere. Hence, after that election, everybody decided there was no future. What's the way going forward after you have mobilized and done everything humanly possible? And then it's disrupted on the day of the election because you cannot defend yourself. Way forward, please. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. I think Tunja Aderi next, please.
Good evening, sir. Thank you all. I have two questions. The first question is there a way in Nigeria that we can reduce the cost of elected people into offices? I believe the amount of money we spend, it's ridiculous. And if every 4 years, what an average politician is looking to is how to embezzle money so that he can spend it in the next election, I believe we are not going anywhere. So we keep saying the third force. Is there a way this third force can come together and we can strategize of how to reduce the spending? I mean, the cost of electing people into governance. That's the first question. Then the second question is, just like the last speaker said, I personally don't believe in zoning. I know the Nigerian political space is a bit complicated. We rather go for competence. And I think we need to get to that stage in Nigeria where we can elect our leaders based on their pedigree, based on what they've done before, and based on competence. Without us doing this, I don't see us going anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Morgan Bob Manuel, and then I'll probably add to that Dr. Shane Roberts. Yeah. And then we'll allow Antito to answer. Morgan, go ahead.
Yeah, good evening all. Please, I believe so much in what Atedo Peterside is saying. And of course, this is the way forward for Nigeria. Now, my challenge is this. If you look at most of us here, we belong to the corporate, well-educated field, and we know that, of course, educationally, exposure, we know what we are doing. Now, I'm pleading, or what we want is a workable solution, because when you go into the field, you are faced with entirely a different, very different situation. And what is the plan? This third force to bring people like us to succeed in Nigeria. Thank you. Hello.
Itua.
Hello.
Have we lost Itua? I think he's frozen.
Frozen.
I think he's frozen. But he had called Sheyi Roberts anyway.
Yes, I'm online. Can you hear me?
Yes, I believe I can hear you.
Yes, maybe
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, maybe I should go on with my.
I think so, because he had called your name anyway.
Yes. Now, what are your thoughts on independent candidates? You rightly identified the overbearing and dominant nature of APC and PDP in our electoral process, and how difficult, if not or even a third force, is present credible candidates, willing candidates for election. Don't you think we missed an opportunity with the passage of the electoral bill, which is now the Electoral Act, by not insisting on independent candidates, which means someone like you or Itua, my brother, would actually run for office without having to fraternize or associate with maybe unsavory or undesirable characters in many of our current political parties, rather than having to, hold your nose and join a party and which you don't agree with their ethos or with their values. If we had independent candidates like they have in the US, then that actually make it easier for people to run, particularly for the small offices, local government chairman, state legislator, or even federal legislator. Not presidency may be a step too far because the infrastructure and the machinery and the cost may be too large.
I got the question.
Yes, thank you very much. That's my question.
I'm not sure whether Itua is still there.
I think he got bumped out. Yes.
I'm around. Please go ahead and answer those questions.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Okay, because we didn't know where you were, so I was getting worried. Okay, let me just say, I was sketched through a number of things. Somebody spoke about democracy dividend. It was more of a comment. Then he finished up, I think it was Charles Yoro, and he mentioned two particular people, and said, oh, how about Mr. X and Mr. Y? The truth is that the two people he mentioned, I don't know them very well. I don't know them as such, so I cannot make any comments about them, nor do I really want to go down the minefield of picking individuals. I only mentioned one name as an example, that nobody should come and tell me that there's no 50-year-old from a zone or things like that. So that's about that. I don't want to go down the route of Mr. X or Mr. Y, whom I don't even know. There was the talk about the national ID card and all this identification. Yes, it's very frustrating, but there has been some progress. I mean, I myself, I have a national ID card. It's in my pocket. Of course, to get the SIM card, you must register. They take your biometrics. To get the BVN, they take your biometrics. Voter's card, they take your biometrics. Driving license, biometrics, passport. I have all those things. So I think, but before we get exasperated, the good news is that it looks as if we're getting to the end of that chain, because the more we have of all these things, the time will come when, hey, it becomes so easy to identify everybody. It's sad that it's taken this long, because I would have thought that the national ID card in particular could have been accelerated and everybody would have it. And that would be your number one instrument for being able to identify yourself. But like I said, but progress is being made, albeit slow. And my focus is 2023. And I don't think we're going to have the ID cards issued for everybody before then. So I still keep my focus on 2023 and the things that concern leadership there. Somebody said competence zoning. Please, let's be very careful. I only mentioned zoning with reference to presidency. And I actually also said that, hey, there's no right or wrong. I said, look, I personally favor, if presidency has stayed in the North for all of 8 years, perhaps you should go to the South. If you want to convince me, when you say, oh, let's go for merit, if you want to convince me that in the entire North of Nigeria, there's nobody with competence, I'll tell you, sorry, I don't buy that. I have nominated people from all over the North for various positions. Some of them phenomenally competent. So again, so if you zone to a whole, if you talk about zoning to 3 geopolitical zones, that is a huge mass of people, probably in one case over 100 million people, in another close to that. Why do we demean ourselves and tell ourselves things like, oh, that it will be difficult to find somebody who is competent out of 100 million Nigerians? There's no, if you're talking about the whole of the North, I have to assume that there are candidates who are competent from the North. Talking about the whole of the South, again, you will always find people who are competent. So the discussion was not about, do we drop competence? It was about, is there an overriding need to give people a sense of belonging and make them not believe that power is domiciled in one place forever, to the point where even when you bring somebody after 8 years from the North to come and replace his brother from the North, from the first day, the task of governance for him becomes very difficult because people are angry. They think it has been monopolized by one section. That's what I was talking about. And it's not, again, luckily our laws don't forbid you from doing what you like. If you want, you can produce the president from Northwest Zone alone forever if you win the election every time. It's allowed in our laws. So let's not get hung up about that. I was just thinking that I wouldn't want my own zone, if you call the whole of the South my zone, to monopolize presidency forever. I would feel uncomfortable myself. That's the only point I was making. So let's not get lost on that, because, and I think that since I've said, let's not get lost on that. People talk about touts, thugs, elections. Hey, I'm not going to sit down with you and pretend that I have the answer to every issue in Nigeria. Yes, there are problems. I was the person who mentioned that if you told Ito and I to go and disrupt primaries, we know how to do it. That we don't do it doesn't mean that we don't know how to do it. Give me a double-barrel gun, I go and fire shots in the air twice. Everybody will run away. So it's true that there are those challenges, but guess what? That's why we have to keep on improving the processes and the systems. That's why we need a better electoral act and so on. And that's why some of us are saying that there's a bit more hope this time than 4 years ago, when, to all intents and purposes, you could vote in one place and they write the results somewhere else. I didn't have much faith in the results of the elections that took place in 2019, because they were not counting them in the right place. So as far as I was concerned, it was said I wrote an article in 2015 actively trying to influence the presidential election. In 2019, I didn't really bother that, because I knew there was only one outcome. Because I had not seen a political party that I thought had the sincerity to allow any result except the one that says that they won presidency. So I never got excited. I expected that come what come may, they will announce the result in their own favor. So I don't know whether that result is right or wrong, but I'm saying that I had no faith in the process, also given the way they were counting votes somewhere else. So let's put that one aside. So yes, the chances are that people can incentivize thugs and touts to try and disrupt elections. Those are some of the challenges that exist in many countries and including here. But let's not kid ourselves that because of that we give up. But let me turn it on its head. There is no problem that you will mention and tell me that it exists in Nigeria that will make me give up on Nigeria. Because all problems are man-made. All problems can be solved by some other men. So I have a can-do spirit. You will never convince me that because some talk showed up somewhere, so therefore we should give up on the whole idea of elections. It's not going to happen. Yes, we will do our best. We can mobilize ourselves. Now we have better communications. How about those days when there was even no mobile phone? It's because now we are seeing more of those things because people can record the events and put it on social media and so. But some of those things were always there. And we always still had elections. We had elections here in Nigeria, a number of times, even when I was much younger. There were always some malpractices. Yes, we can all do our best to eliminate them, but you will never get a perfect election. The most important thing is that, is it good enough to give us fairly good results in several places? Somebody said, oh, how do we reduce the cost of elections and all that, the third force? Hey, this third force is something that I just mentioned that happens naturally, almost. That, you see, if two people are at the top of anything and they actually behave very well and do everything properly, they become very difficult to topple. It is their bad behavior that opens the door. That's the only point I was making. And of course, it's for those who don't like those two parties to try and organize and decide which of the other third party to join. But at the end of the day, it comes down to a numbers game. So a third force will come if many people decide its time has come. And it's for some people to decide that this is the time that it should come, and then it might come. The other thing I mentioned is that perhaps I noticed that some people get very excited about this whole idea of zoning, and then they start to tell you, of course, the data is there. You two have put photographs of all past presidents, and they tell you that they feel very, very hurt that their geopolitical zone, the Southeast, has not really had the presidency, for anything more than 6 months or something like that. Forget about Azikiwe. He was not really the head of government. So they feel that, hey, the Southeast must also have a look in. The comment I will make there, because I think it's important to hear people. The comment I will make there, I just ask a question. If I'm from the Southeast and I believe that my area has been marginalized since the Civil War, and I think somebody should look after and solve that problem, let me tell you what my number one prayer will be. It will not be for a Southeast president. It will not be for an Igbo president. My first prayer will be for an Igbo-loving president. And let me explain that. You see, sometimes an Igbo-loving president can do more for the Igbos than even an Igbo man can do. Take the South-South. People think, oh, South-South was even worse. Before GEJ, they never produced a head of state, ever, in whatever form. But guess what? Some people argue in the South-South that Yar'Adua was a South-South loving president, and that was what was most important to them. So sometimes your focus should first be on solving a problem. Putting a symbolic person there may also come at the same time, or it may come later. But I'm saying that, to me, what is the priority is to have an Igbo-loving president if you believe that the Igbos have not had a good deal. If I love the Igbos and I decide to redress whatever I think they have suffered, that begins to solve the problem. And that can be done by anybody who believes in a level playing field. So I'm saying let's be careful because we're mixing up things. Some people are looking for an Igbo-loving president. Some are saying, no, they want the Southeast to produce the president. The other thing I will also warn is that people often get very disappointed when somebody comes out from their place and does not deliver. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's just important to emphasize that I think what is required is a president that everybody feels will work for them. They'll get a look in. Somebody mentioned empathy, that I didn't use the word empathy when I was talking about, this was earlier, when I was talking about qualities. Of course, I could have used 100 different words. I only mentioned a few. Of course, empathy is important, but those are things that some good leaders have naturally. Anyway, so I didn't list every single quality that I expect from a good leader. Otherwise, we'll be here all night. The other thing I would say is that somebody said, oh, independent candidates. Hey, again, I don't look at that as anything that will really move the needle. The truth is that even the countries where they have independent candidates, how many candidates are really out there, independent candidates and win seats and so on? In any case, again, my focus is 2023. Sadly, the Electoral Act, from what I know, does not make provisions for independent candidates. So I'm willing to put that aside and focus on the things ahead. In life, I don't like to leave the things I can do that I can change now, between now and next year, and start worrying about something that has already been put aside. I prefer to deal with the one that I can still change, I can still influence. Perhaps the next Electoral Act revision, 4 years from now or 3 years from now, you can reopen the issue of independent candidates, but not now in 2022. Let's focus on the task we have at hand. Nigeria has chosen that elections should be between political parties. That too can produce good results if we have good parties. So let's focus on getting some of the parties to behave better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Atedo. We'll just take a few more questions and then we really will need to go because we've spent a little bit more time than I really wanted us to. But I guess this goes to the quality of the discourse that we're having. So I'll ask just the remaining 4 people to ask their questions, and I'm not going to take any more after this. Please, I beg. Omobolande Oshoba, I think Humphrey Oseni. There's somebody there, God is able. I don't know who you are. Yusuf Buhari, I think. Yusuf Buhari it is. And then Daniel Uloko. I think we'll stop at that. I know Atonyesia, you put up your hand. Well, let's see if we can take you as well. But let's really close at that. And then we'll say we've had quite a good and refreshing evening tonight. So Omobalale, you go first. Humphrey, you next. God is able. Yusuf Wari, Daniel Uloko, and then we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My first question is this. What is the way forward regarding, I think we are not taking cognizance of the social status, the social economic status of we Nigerians, because it's wrong to assume that everybody, I believe we have more people who are in the D and E class, who are not even, who to survive on a daily basis is a struggle. And it's always, as you said, it's a game of numbers. So how do you reach such people? Because their own reality is quite different from ours. Then the second question is this. I've had experiences where I've heard people, especially politicians, and the role of each, how they use cultism to their favor. And then I've found situations where somebody have told me, do you know that certain people who are leaders are members of these groups, and then they use them to their favor. And then I have an experience with the local government election that was in my environment. 3-4 days before the election, young people were carrying guns on the streets in broad daylight, and no one could question them, nothing. And at the end of the day, the person behind these people are supporting ended up becoming the local government chairman. So how do you deal with these things, most especially when people get away with things they are supposed to be punished over, and it ends up having an effect on the economy or the country as a whole?
Thank you very much, Bolande. Can I please appeal to everyone? Let's restrict our timing. And then just one question. Let us be fair. And don't make it long-winded, please. God is able. Please go straight to your question or your comment.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. I just want to give the organizer my own view. I must agree that 2022 is our focus, but I believe in 2022, we might not get it what we are expecting. Because either we like it or not in Nigeria, my name is Leaders-Atedo Peterside. The truth of the matter is that the people in power, they will still one way or the other get themselves back in power. But I want to appeal to the likes of Atedo and our organizer of this program. Let's go back to the grassroots. Let's go back to the grassroots to be able to get young generation on board. If, for example, two areas I want us to concentrate on. One, let's go back to legislative arm of governments. Let this outfit, I'm so happy about this outfit. I'm speaking from US. Let's come together, let all of us come together. Let's know how to get all the House of Assembly, the National Assembly. We can implement law that will give room for younger, independent minds to rule our country. Either we like it or not. If we continue with the system that is operating in Nigeria, the likes of APC, PTP will continue ruling us and we continue having problems. But if we agree as a team and we go back to the root, the likes of Chief Atedo, put what he has on ground, get independent minded, go to different communities, discover young people that people like, that have good record. Let's put them to the field. Let them go to the legislative arm of the government. Give us a law that will give us a good governance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yusuf, please.
Thank you very much, sir. Floriat.
Floriat.
What I want to say, I think a lot of the people have been saying bits and bits of it, but I think that we keep on missing the target in the sense that the political parties, the machinery of the political parties from the national level to the regional level, to the state level, to the local government level, to the ward level, this is a huge population of Nigerians. Now, these are the people that actually decide who the leadership, who the flag bearers of political parties are. And I mean, it's not difficult to remember or recall that the capacity of people cannot operate above their capacities, which means that if the quality of the people that run the political parties is low, then the type of people that they will identify or promote to come out to emerge as candidates of their parties will also be low. So ownership of political parties, stalwarts, is very important. Participating in the hierarchies of the political parties is also very important. In fact, I believe that these two groups are much more important than even the last category, which is the aspirants. You're just basically a football player. The owners of the club and the management are the ones that decide how the plays go. So I think, sir, my question is, why is it that people like you, people that are like minds, have not come together to either form a political party or take over one of the smaller political parties and then grow it to maturity until a time whereby it can now face all these titanic, corrupt political parties? Thank you, sir.
All right. I think that's a good question, and I'm sure that Atedo will do justice to it. Daniel Uloko, Humphrey Oseni, and we'll begin to close from there. Daniel, please, quickly.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My question is very simple. I want to know, I belong to a group of young people who will go out and do training for some young individuals. And I noticed that a lot of the young people do not even have PVC, not even have interest on voting and anything like that. I want to know, what do you think we can do to solve this issue or to help them come into the realization that they need to vote or they need to decide? Because when you talk to them, they tell you that their vote does not count. How do we solve this issue? How do we make them know that your vote will count? You even need to have a PVC or vote to know that if your vote does not count, that let it be that you do your best. You tried your own best. I want to know again, the issue of bribing in politics is something that is rampant everywhere. The people are hungry. If you go on the street, young guys, they are hungry. I meet them on the daily. They don't have food. So if somebody is willing to offer them sharp money now, they are willing to throw in the toil. How can we teach them, or what can we do to make them know that you don't have to sell your future? Because mostly because everybody now wants to eat food. There's no food, they just want sharp income. How do we help them overcome something like this? I think this is my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. But I think those questions have sort of been addressed during the course of this discourse. And I don't know if we have anything fresh to add, but I think it's just continue conversations like this and hope that it will sink in. Humphrey, very quickly, please.
Yeah, good evening. My contribution is, I like the idea of a third force. I believe we can have a strong opposition and we can have strong candidates from the opposition with good integrity and character. But I think what has weakened opposition, there have been many good people that have entered politics to try to come in, is lack of unity. A key factor, there has to be a coalition, there has to be unity. In 2002, in Kenya, the political parties, the opposing parties came together, they formed the coalition, and Arap Moi had ruled for about 40 years, and it looked as if there was no way he can be defeated. But they came together and they were able to remove Arap Moi and have a candidate of their own. So if there can be unity, if we can identify candidates, this forum is good. Candidates that have the character, and we can join forces, and the opposing parties can join forces and have a united front. Because what has always defeated good people, the British had what they call divide and conquer. Just divide the opposition, keep people apart, and they can never win. Here in South Africa, the Dutch, during the apartheid era, they divided all the tribes. Zulu, Xhosa, colored, half-caste, Indians don't go to the same school. They make sure they don't go to the same church. They divided them, and as a result, they could rule over them till ANC was able to bring people together. So if we can unite, that's the key. Everybody thinks I'm the best candidate. We have good candidates, but everybody thinks God has spoken to me, or I'm the best candidate. If the good candidates can unite, their friends, partners can unite. I think I like the idea of a template, but I feel there should be kind of committee that each party, opposition party, will send representatives, and they can come together and begin to vote a single candidate in different levels. If they can come together and unite with a coalition, I believe we will have a very good chance. And when people can see this united front, a lot of people are disenchanted. When they can see a united front among the opposition, I believe more people will be encouraged to vote, because people say, oh, candidate A is good, candidate B is good, party C is good in the opposition. Who do we vote for? So people don't come out. I believe the key issue can be forming a committee where we can come together, and the different political parties, we can pick candidates among them. That's my contribution.
Thank you very much, Humphrey. Thank you. I think that is noted. I think we're going to get our speaker to respond to all those questions. Okay. I know that Kola and Toib want to ask a question. Is it going to be very brief so that Kola, is it brief? Toib, is it brief? One shot each, and let's close.
It's going to be brief. Good afternoon, Mr. Itua. I was invited here by my mentor, Mr. Akin Braithwaite, whom you've spoken to. I just have a comment. First of all, it's nice listening to you, Mr. Peterside. My name is Kola Akinwale. I'm currently the National Mobilization Secretary for ADC. We decided a little while back that we're tired of just putting our comments on the social media. It's time for us to take action. And what we've decided, I decided to look at myself from England, for example, and get involved with a party in Lagos. I got involved, joined ADC in October last year as the Publicity Secretary in Lagos State. The game plan is to try and push and galvanize ourselves, get like-minded people together, like myself. I was born in England, but I had the privilege of living in Nigeria. I grew up there, went back to England. I've seen a lot out there, but Nigeria is still my best country. I want that. Nigeria at present is not the Nigeria of my dreams, but that's not going to happen if we keep talking about it. We can't allow PDP and APC to keep on, just pillaging the country. So what we need to do is to come together. A lot of us start mobilizing ourselves, like-minded people, young intellectuals, youths as well are in the party now. I started in Lagos, as I said, in October. the current chairman, Chief Razun Wusu, is open to transformation. And the ideas that Mr. Braithwaite and I and others have, we are trying to push that not only in Lagos, but now across the party. I was then appointed the National Mobilization Secretary in December. The whole idea is to recruit at least 1,000 Nigerians who are able to pay party dues across 36 states, and in maybe 6 months, try and go to 1 million. That can happen if even just the 1,000 can bring 10 each and another 3. It may seem as if it's a lot, but it's not, because we've got over 200 million Nigerians in the country. And the only way we are going to topple these guys is for us to stop sitting on the fence. I'm not talking about anybody here being egocentric. We need to work together. That's the only way we're going to topple these guys. There's rigging, there's all sorts. I know about that. We'll tackle that as we go along. But the longer we sit on the fence, the longer we keep on putting out social media comments without actually doing something in the political space, then we are just going to pass over Nigeria for another 4 years of suffering. I do not think the country can bear that. Just as you said, there's so many people suffering. My children are in England. They will not even come to Nigeria. They said, Dad, if you fix the country, we'll come. That's sad for me to hear as a Nigerian. And I see a lot of Nigerian youths coming out of university. There are no jobs. My 21-year-old daughter walked into a job the other day off university, not even 22. Daddy had no input in that. But in Nigeria, we cannot even do that because the infrastructure is so messed up. We all know that. So the only way this is going to happen, we need to come together. And as I said, ADC is very open, very transformational. Chief Ralph also lives in the UK. He's got part of his family there. So you understand what needs to be done. I've lived abroad, so I know what's good to be done. I'm not a politician, but I believe in relationship building. There's some good Nigerians in Nigeria. If we come together and bring the best of us, then we can push these clowns out of business. And that's my submission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kola. You said you're not a politician, but you're a politician now. You're playing politics. Okay, I think we can close. I can't find Toib. Toib, are you there? Or you've gone home? All right.
Thank you.
Please close for
yes,
us.
okay. Let me just close by running through some of these and making a few comments in some places. I think even it got a sense and pointed out that some of these questions that are recurring, we've already answered them. Somewhere in the psyche of some people in Nigeria is this idea that if I give somebody money, the person must do my bidding. And I think some of the people who are saying this thing, perhaps because they've not had money before, because people who have money know that one of the biggest risks about giving money to people and telling them to go and do your bidding is that they may take your money and do a different thing. And that's what I was quoting MKO and all that stuff. The truth is that, let me explain it differently. And I've spoken to youths in a village before. And let me explain what I mean. If they took money to vote for somebody, they admitted to you they voted for the person. But they also told you, guess what? They didn't see any other person anyway. As far as they were concerned, they had no faith in the whole system. So it was a case of saying that it was the only person here. If he's giving me 5,000, let me take it from him and then give him what he wants and go home. That's all. But it becomes a different ball game as soon as we get a situation where there's a contest for a position, a serious one. And as fast as Itwa is giving them money, I'm telling them, take Itwa's money, but vote for me, and things like that and so on. But I'm just amazed how so many people believe that as soon as somebody gives you money, you become his slave. If that was the case, rich people would just have the whole country as their slaves forever. It's really not that simple. And I also know people who have confessed they've taken money from somebody, they ate his money, and they voted for somebody else. I'm saying we need to encourage more of this second type of behavior. Take money from anybody if you like. In any case, like somebody said in a gathering I was in, I think it was yesterday in Abuja, that money they're giving you anyway is your money. They stole it from Nigeria. So take it from them and do what you want to do. So don't get into this mindset of thinking that just because somebody gave you money. Some people say they're sharing beans, they're sharing rice. Take it and eat it and do what you want to do. Just because I ate your beans, I don't give a damn whether you gave it to me as the gift anyway. So I don't believe that receiving a gift means that you become a slave forever. And that's one of the things we have to break between now and next year, that mindset. Somebody has mentioned, cultists, guns. Again, I'm not going to sit down here and pretend. There are parts of Nigeria where elections can be very violent and have been violent before. It's not the same all over the country. Some areas, there are some well-known dark spots and so on. So we're not going to pretend that it doesn't exist. So I'm not saying that I have a solution to every problem. If I did that, hey, then I can just sit back and relax. The reason we're discussing all this and looking for solutions is because there are problems, and for some of them, we've not found the solutions. And all we're saying is that we have to admit there's a problem, understand the problem, and put our heads together and try and put pressure to solve and improve things. Somebody has mentioned, focus on the grassroots. Of course, you focus on the grassroots. The demography is there. The numbers show it is about youths. I like the emphasis somebody said, let's focus more on legislators, because that's very important. Yes, there should be a lot more focus on who is your legislator. Do you take part in those elections? Who should come out and represent you at every level? Then I think it was, Yusuf Buhari drew attention to the fact that, hey, the parties are go all the way down to the grassroots, the hierarchy, remembering that you cannot take part in the process by just staying at the top. And that's why even whatever early engagement we have with some of these other registered parties that are smaller, it's about them opening themselves all the way top to bottom. Because if you don't admit people properly, then it's a problem. Nobody's going to encourage people to come and join your party so that you can still do as you like and repeat the problem of APC and PDP. So I agree with him. Now, somebody was talking and said, everybody must come together. Please, who is coming together? I already said we said there are two dominant political parties, and then there's the rest. I remember when they were talking about banks coming together to sort of consolidate, somebody made a comment that, 5 times 0 is equal to 0. So be careful how you go into the mindset of thinking that bringing together 5 struggling banks merging solves a problem. Because it's true that 5 times 0 is equal to 0. So the truth is that just because somebody exists does not mean that it's bringing a lot to the table. The main thing is bringing to the table is that it's a registered political party. So once one of the 16 it says you can use my party, then the rest they can join if they want to join. If they don't want to join, with due respect, they don't have much anyway. So why do you want to spend all your time trying to convince somebody who doesn't have a lot to offer? I can understand if his party was a heavyweight party, but if they're all small parties, then get a move on with the small party that wants to imbibe democracy, open its doors properly, admit everybody. If the other small parties don't want to join, they may remain small forever. But let's get out of this mindset that unless every small player comes together, you cannot have a big player. That's not true. That is false. In fact, sometimes you can even argue the opposite. That if you're going to dissipate all your energy with 6 small players arguing from morning to night about every little thing, then forget it. Drive away 5 of them, hold on to 1, and open the party properly and admit everybody else in there. The other comment I'm going to make is that it keeps recurring. The youths and their PVC, the register and all that. Hey, how do we get them? We said we just started the process. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. So we have between now until end of June to continue that, improve the messaging, improve the campaign, get more youths involved in the campaign. It's all part of the template. And we want to reach out to many more groups to do the same thing. We're not competing. If I'm involved in Go Nigeria, that's trying to reach out to youths, as far as I'm concerned, we have the same objective with any other group that also wants to get our youth politically active. We have a shared vision, so we're doing the same job. And the more the merrier. Somebody mentioned the usual a concern about some various tactics that are used, divide and rule, and how you've got to unite and all that. Some of these things, when we mention them, of course, they've always existed. divide and rule is classic. But in any contest, one thing is very important. We have to focus on trying to get cleverer than the enemy. Because all these things we've mentioned that the enemy does, yeah, most of them, we know them. Some are simple, some are difficult to surmount, but most of them can be surmounted. So I don't want us to close by wallowing in misery and thinking that there's so many things that cannot change. And I'm not going to ignore the comment from the gentleman from ADC who says, oh, they're already doing this, they're already doing that. For goodness sake, do this, do that, and do everything, you know. But also open your doors. If you open your doors properly, perhaps everybody can join ADC. If you don't open your doors properly, perhaps they'll join another party and you will not be the third force. So by all means, whatever you're doing, which you've mentioned, I like what I'm hearing. I hope you're doing it properly. But because I've already made a prediction that I think one of those 16 parties is going to be successfully, if they open their door properly, at least they will grow in this next election. Whether they win or not is a different ball game, but they can grow substantially by harnessing all the people who have lost faith in the bigger players, in the bigger parties. And I want to end by making reference to the banking industry analogy. You see, people keep on saying, come to me and say things like, oh, you guys began banks, you were very successful, and you know, how did you manage it? You were very young, and within a short time, or within 10 years, 15 years, all those newer banks were on top. How did you guys get there? Let me remind you of one very important detail. Take investment banking, it was a combination of two things. You doing your best to build your institution, but guess what? There were some institutions that were there before us. When I entered banking in Nigeria, there were 5 or 6 major merchant banks. Guess what? Most of them imploded. They crumbled on account of government interference. So our success was doing the best we can to rise. And then guess what? Those on top imploded. It is the same thing I'm talking about with political parties in Nigeria. I would be very concerned. I would be very worried if I thought APC and PDP were phenomenal organizations. They're so well organized that there's harmony. They all love each other, and they're one mighty force that nobody can destabilize. When you look at them, even from outside, you can see that half the time they're fighting themselves. So the potential is there that they can implode. So 2 things can happen. Build your own up and hope and pray that the person who is up will misbehave and implode and come downwards towards you. Perhaps it's the combination of somebody mismanaging his implosion and you managing your own ascent that will ensure that you become a major force. So that as far as I'm concerned, I've not given up hope. I've not given up hope for 2022, 2023. I think between now and next year, a lot can change and a lot will change. And I believe a lot must change, beginning with the Electoral Act, beginning with youth, Nigerian youth, understanding their strength in numbers and deciding, hey, I end on this note. You see, the NSAS was just an indication of what can happen, how people can wake up suddenly, very quickly, spontaneous. We have to channel that same energy and anger towards the next elections to ensure that the youth take their rightful place and claim their country back. That is my dream. That is my prayer. You know, and also I will end by saying that I have never subscribed to this theory of, each time people say it around me, I correct them. Oh, Nigerian youths are not responsible. Nigerian youths are not good. I always ask the person, do you have children? They say yes. Are your children useless? They typically say no. I said, oh, so it's other people's children that are useless and yours are okay. I have children, they're not useless. I think they're very good. And many people I know believe that their own children are very good. So the truth is that we have to empower the youth and during the process to enable them to claim back their country. It is when they look like they're doing that in a serious way that everybody will take note, including the two big political parties. Make yourself a force to be reckoned with, and then they will reckon with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Atedo. Thank you for your time. I must warn you in advance that we will bring you back. Also that definitely we'll find a way, because there are one or two other things I wanted to ask that time doesn't quite permit. And also that I'll find a way to get together with you, meet with you, and then maybe take deeper dives. But the question that I would not allow you to escape from, because last week as I was closing, and I mentioned that you were coming, somebody mentioned that I should, that why is Atedo not running for office? So maybe you can answer that question yourself, that are you going to run for one office or the other, or what role are you going to really play in this next few months?
I think I should put your mind at rest and say, look, if I see anything that can help my country, Nigeria, rescue it and get it to the top, it's something that definitely one will look at. And so why would you commit all your time, energy, and everything to try and get people, galvanize people? But it's not about yourself. Everything I'm talking about, if you notice, is saying, can we create a movement of some sort? One person getting up by himself and saying, I want to run for president, with due respect, sometimes you look at them and you think, hey, is this person serious? Is this for real? Is it about yourself? So the point I'm making is that I'm more interested in creating a movement, in creating an environment that ensures that the best of Nigeria comes forward, and the very best person that looks like they should be the ones that we can find at this point, be the one to become our president. I can get up and say, if it is Itua, it should be Itua. If it is, Jimo, it should be Jimo. If it's Atedo, it should be Atedo. Yes. And I've never said never. Let me just make that very clear, because every now and again, people tell me things like, oh, they hear that I said I will never do, I never do that. I say, listen, everything I ever said is available on the internet. Go to Wikipedia. I wrote once, and I stood by it when Yar'Adua was president. I said, if they try and make me minister, GEJ, I will not accept. I was offered and I didn't accept. That I rejected a particular office at a particular time for reasons which I always explain to those who ask me. I was on the economic team of Yar'Adua. I was on the economic team of Goodluck Jonathan. Even with this government, I've been working with them on the development plan, Agenda 2050 and so on, because it's about that future. But it's not about me. And I worry when people say the reason why they want to be president is that they deserve it as a reward. Reward for what? They should give you the country as a reward? That is stupidity. If you want to give somebody a reward, give him a national award. A highest award you can give somebody probably GCON if the person is not the head of state. I can understand you say give somebody an award for what they have done, but you don't. Let's not toy with leadership. It should be for the very best. And if I see somebody that I believe is better than me, I will be at the forefront of saying, hey, this person should go and run as well. So I don't rule anything out, but at the same time, my only commitment is, can we get the best of the best? Thank you.
Thank you very much. God bless you. I think you and I are exactly on the same page. And by God's grace, we will drive this movement, and we will do our best at this time of our lives to make sure that Nigeria gets the best that it deserves. Thank you very, very much. My love and regards to Dudu and the rest of the family, and I will call and come and see you. I want to thank everyone who's been on the platform. Thank you for your patience. We've been here a little bit over a couple of hours, and the comments have been great. See you same time next week at 5 o'clock, when we'll be having yet another very insightful Nigerian come in and talk to us. Thank you very much. Florian,
thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you all. God bless you. Have a very pleasant evening and a wonderful weekend ahead. Thank you.